Good morning, LinkedIn friends, Value First Nation. Welcome to another episode of Value First Leadership with Tony Dowling. How you doing, Tony?
I'm doing very well. Good afternoon if you're over my side of the pond, and good morning to everybody who's over on Chris's side. Yes, we're used to
Yes,
this. Although it changed, we changed back again now because last week we changed that. We changed our
I
times,
know.
but now you've
Speaking,
changed yours, so we're we're back to normal.
oh man. And yesterday, let me tell you, I tried to go live with Nico, scheduling an event. LinkedIn, time wasn't even working well, so it wouldn't let me
Oh man,
schedule at the right time. Talk about removing barriers. Can we just
ha
be done with the time change situation? That's why we're here. That's why we weren't here last week, folks. This 1 week delay of time change between the UK and the US, got in the way of the calendar. And when we depend on that calendar, it helps when we know what time it is um, on each
and
side.
it's crazy. I mean, it's not like only been happening for a few years. You think we'd have managed to get our heads around it by now, or even been it by now? Because it
Yeah.
appears to serve no purpose.
I'm pretty sure we should be binning it. Hopefully, AI can help us with that soon, sooner rather than later.
Like it.
Um, but yeah, that's what talking about Principle 5 today of Value First Leadership Manifesto. This out of the 7 commitments. Leading up to now, we have talked about that as leaders, we're going to try and create conditions for value rather than trying to control every
Yeah.
little piece of the stream of value. We're going to distribute authority to where uh, knowledge naturally exists. So the people on the front lines, can we enable them to actually make decisions without having to come to us for everything? Number 3, we want to illuminate paths rather than dictate routes. So help people see where they want to go instead of having work instructions for every single thing. And last time we were here, it was about asking powerful questions
Mhm.
instead of providing all the answers, which lines up well with today, I think, because if we're asking the right questions, people are going to tell us what the barriers are. And we can either, like, this is the place where if we can, I'd love your take here, Tony, before we like recite the,
Mm.
the, the commitment, because this is the place where all the control, you're controlling like habits that you feel like as the leader, you need to be, controlling what's happening. Like, if you could direct all that energy here, wow, watch out. Like, just remove the barriers that people are raising their hand every day. Like, this is working, this is not working. Like, that's where you want to enact some control. Yeah.
Mm. Mm. So I think more than any of the other seven or the other things that we've talked about in value first leadership, this is the closest, I think, to the concept, the idea of transformation. Dare I use that word? When I think of transformation, I don't think of a new software system, although that might be an enabler towards transformation. I don't think of getting rid of a load of people, which is another transformation type excuse. Transformation means changing the way the business works, right? Changing it maybe even from one thing into another thing. And that largely you can consider as the removal of old fashioned, old timey, old traditional blockages. And as you say, asking great questions of people will identify those. Is there every chance as a leader, you know what those blockages are anyway. But the sheer force of will, time commitment, scale puts us off from making these changes, from removing these barriers. And a lot of them, a lot of them potentially were put in place for the right reasons initially, that maybe to stop somebody going crazy and selling all your inventory for a ridiculously low rate or something. But almost every single one of these that are in there needs to be rethought, re-engineered, and ideally re-engineered with those people with that delegated authority that we talked about as well. Let the teams put the controls in place. create the plans and create the controls rather than me, because of my fear of losing control. This is the big transformation. We're going to change from a reducing um, a company that thinks itself smaller to a company that gets bigger by multiplying itself through the people that work there. This is the crucial piece, right? So we are not the company. We are the bottleneck. We are the limiting factor. We are the single point of failure in many of our companies. How do we remove that? By removing these barriers that we talked about.
Yeah. Yeah. And that was some of my favorite, like a part of my favorite moments are leaders telling me that they're going to sweep in front of me, uh, because, I like to move fast and break some things. Uh, but I think the key is like kind of bringing that organizationally, like that mindset. It can't just be like, okay, I really like this talented person, so let me, like, they're going to create some chaos, so let me help, like, almost like reactively, like, prevent damage. So let me read through this,
Yeah, yeah.
because it's again, this is powerful if you just believe, and not overthink the words here. Like, so we'll remove barriers rather than add pressure. We believe value emerges naturally when obstacles are removed. We commit to identifying and eliminating constraints that prevent natural value flow rather than trying to force outcomes through additional pressures or incentives. This means we will identify and eliminate unnecessary bureaucracy and red tape instead of adding more controls. We will simplify processes that create friction rather than optimizing complex procedures. We will address systemic problems rather than blaming individuals for system failures. We will remove fear as a motivator in organizational culture rather than using pressure to drive performance. And we will create psychological safety for risk taking and innovation rather than punishing failure.
Mm. Huge challenge for leaders. This is a huge challenge, and one you need to be the organization needs to be um, ridiculously candid, courageously candid. What's it? Radically candid. That's what I was going for. It's a great book called Radical Candor. And this is about honesty. It's not about making things easy for people necessarily. It's about removing the barriers. But the same cultural imperatives need to be in place for number seven as they do for everything else. For the whole seven as they do for this one. The organization must undertake this together. There's a lot of people in your business, if you look around now, who are hiding behind these barriers, right? I daren't do that thing because there's a control in place. It's looked down on. If I break the mold, I might find myself in trouble, and so on and so on. Yet everything we know about these constraining practices, we know they reduce the effectiveness of the organization, particularly the creative organization, the modern organization. Let's call it that. So it's a real, and this is why I talk about transformation. This is a cultural change as much as anything. From no, don't do that, or this is the way you do it, to let's see what we can achieve. And you're quite right, Chris. It's not about having one person in the business going around upsetting everybody else. Even if
Try
that's
that.
yeah,
Doesn't work.
even if it's the most senior leader, it's about having everybody in the business throwing
Yeah.
these rules out, and everybody being part of exactly the same process. So I refer to Dan Pink a lot when I talk about leadership, and his book, Drive, The Surprising Science of Motivation, comes up over and over and over again. We know for a fact that when we place, let's call them industrial incentives on people, things like if you achieve this task within this certain time or within these certain parameters, you'll get more money, right? If you hit your target, you'll earn more commission. We know for a fact, behavioral science knows that reduces my ability to solve complex problems. We know it. This is established in science, yet business continually uses this approach. In fact, removing that incentive opens up the opportunity for people to, with psychological safety, to stretch a leg, to chance an arm, to reach for somewhere that they wouldn't have reached before, because their mortgage is not dependent on the outcome. therefore, therefore, they're much more reassured about giving it a try. So we
Oh
know
man.
if you have to be creative, then incentives, this type of, there are other incentives, many other incentives, but this type of industrial incentive, time for money or target achievement, or even performance management in the negative way, if you don't do this thing, that's even worse. You're
Yeah.
actually constraining the organization's ability to solve complex problems.
I mean, man, that framing is everything. Like, I would imagine we're in this place, and there's lots of writing about this too. Like, we don't want everybody on the front lines thinking about or solving complex problems. We want green button, red button, like, show up, do your work, and get enough out the door. And then you get your paycheck, you get your bonus, you get your incentives. And I wasn't prepared to talk about it from that perspective, but it makes so much sense as to why, we do talk about it a lot from an industrial like infrastructure perspective and why this is so hard to unravel. A lot of AI books right now are talking about, how the industrial revolution was basically built to like remove critical thinking, from all the humans that we want them to fit in an assembly line and just show up. We want to mechanize everything, right? And now we need critical thinking, more than ever. And again, we find ourselves back in a place of, creating psychological safety. And an example that I might start harping on every week on this show is that leaders inherently have some idea that change is upon us. Like change, they can't sit tight
Mm,
anymore. They've got to find a way to change. They know that training the organization is a requirement, like to support that change. They will tell you directly that they feel like they should or they want to, or that training is a priority. And then when you ask them to take a half an hour a week to put it on the schedule every week, doesn't move. Everybody in the organization understands lunch and learn, whatever you want to call it. We are training as an organization at that time. 1 to 2% of the week,
mm,
they can't do it.
mm,
They can't do it. And what has happened, I'm working with a client and they finally gotten to this place where it's like Fridays at 10 a.m. we're doing it. And I told them, and it's really rewarding to watch this transpire because I told them the goal, like, yes, there's this process that hasn't been updated in a while, like, lots of tribal knowledge around it. Everybody's feeling the effects of that. And we want to get to that updated document as soon as possible. Like, we can't waste time. We need to fix this now.
mm.
But if you don't take a minute inside of the organization that has never done this before to say, like, our goal with these first few sessions is just to build the habit,
Mm.
like, build the habit, create the safe space, let everybody know that they can speak up in ways that they haven't been able to before. And that barrier to kind of free speech within the business, like I said, people will tell you exactly what the barriers are
Mm.
when you ask them. If you don't know what the barriers are, you either are not asking them or they've stopped telling you because they've learned
Yep. Yep.
there's no value in doing that.
Yep. Yep. The leader's objective and the manager's objective, particularly, we see this a lot in what we used to call middle management. You know, those poor souls who are who have to get the workers aligned to bring the work out at the end of the day and into the weekend and into the managers have a very, very simple task, and that's to achieve the organization's objectives utilizing the resources made available to them. Right now, it kind of makes sense. But if you add to that this other little mantra that I like to practice, that you multiply yourself then through others. So I've got 10 people in my team. That's 10 me's. It's not just me anymore. That's 10 me's. Or all right, even if I'm the most arrogant, big-headed manager on the planet, and I probably was, even if I count them as half as good as me because of all my experience, there's still 5 me's. So my job then becomes the removal of those obstacles so that those 10 people can multiply me, can do more than me. And as you say, I mean, there is so much going on in order to facilitate that in the modern organization. There's so much going on, and we don't want everybody at the sharp end overcoming creative problems, as you say. But there are lots of motivators within a modern organization that should be in play, especially empowered by AI. If you think about it, Daniel Pink talks about autonomy, mastery, and purpose. We're motivated by autonomy, doing something ourselves, using the team that we want to use, the time that we want to do it in, the task, the technique, the way that we want to do it, right? We're motivated by mastery, getting better at something, becoming a recognized expert at something, learning something beyond even what I need for my job. And the big one for me particularly, purpose. Why are we doing this thing? Your organization will be far more motivated if you play to those creative values than if you say to everybody, we'll pay you more money if you hit the target, or we'll get rid of you if you don't hit the target. And that's what's needed today. This is what I mean. Think about the most fundamental problem in B2B small business today: lead gen. Lead gen is a massively complex problem. You will not solve it by doing the same shit over and over and over again. We've proved it conclusively time after time. Sending 10,000 emails doesn't work. Sending 10,000 DMs doesn't work. All you do is annoy people. We know this, but we're still doing it. I had a lovely young chap, I won't say who he was, pitch me yet another AI lead gen last week. And I said, look, I bet it's fantastic. It's absolutely brilliant. But I said, I'm not gonna give it a try. I've wasted so much time trying to make these things work, and they don't. In fact, I'm going back. I've changed my strategy. I'm going back to what I call referral marketing, which maybe we'll cover again in Value First. And he's like, yeah, no, that's really good. He was a very nice chap. He comes back like a couple of days later. Can I give you an offer? Can I give you a discount? Right? So he's not changed his product. He's not changed his approach. He's not taken on board the fact that what I said was actually this thing doesn't work. He said, buy it a different way then. Maybe that will tip you over. And that's what I mean, right? That is not a creative solution to the problem that I applied to him. I said I tried it before and it didn't work. He said, have it cheaper.
Right.
It's got nothing to do with it. Yeah.
His goal is sell more, hit a number, hit a metric. And that's another way. That's one of the primary ways we add pressure is through these incentives. And, this could be the gap that is almost most misrepresented when it comes to, because what comes to mind is the inevitable disconnect between the leadership table or the management room and the front line. And this team cannot understand why things are taking longer than they should, why numbers aren't being hit. And meanwhile, and this is we're still not out of this problem in spots, which is amazing. We've only been dealing with internet for almost 30 years now. Teams that the real examples where when the team and people involved are like they're gung ho about using HubSpot,
Mm.
about doing things new, different, right? And the leadership team is also excited because they don't have a very high, uh, let's say, not all the customer facing teams are seen as high value, doing high value work,
Yeah.
right? Largely because they've been put in positions to send emails and receive calls and do a bunch of data entry, et cetera, et cetera. Meanwhile, on the front, they're actually maintaining the customer relationships more than anybody else in the business. But it gets to the point where the tech, like their computer, is 3, 4, 5 years old. The bandwidth available is not wide enough. It's like, and that's why people like they, and they've said it at some point usually, right? But we find these ridiculous ways to be like, oh, we got to save $1 every spot, so I can't ask for this $1,000 laptop that's getting in the way of millions of dollars of business. And like, if you're not, that should be so easy. Like, as I was brought into organizations, I was trying to force the initiative. Like, I understand there's a process, but like, if anybody gets upset at me for just immediately replacing this laptop on the spot because it's taking HubSpot 30 seconds to load on this person's computer, like, that's unacceptable.
Mm.
And instead of understanding that barrier, you're like, oh, we got to put them on a performance plan, or we've got to add somebody else, or maybe we do more training, like, just all the wrong things. And it beats people down
Mm.
to the point where they're like, it's a joke,
Mm.
right?
And
It's like, oh, my laptop just takes a long time. I don't know. Like,
yeah, and this eats into those things that we just talked about with the biggest motivators. It eats into my autonomy because I've got to wait on the IT person to come and reboot my machine after a fatal crash again, or change this bloody hard drive again. I'm not going to be able to achieve mastery. I can't even use AI because the silicon in my machine is too old, and it'll blow up if I try to get ChatGPT on there. There's the purpose. The purpose of the organization is to give me rubbish tools to do my job. That doesn't seem right. So these are such great examples of these obstacles that you're talking about, and most of the time, because of the way management is looking inward, is looking downward, and is controlling, if you like, they don't even feel like obstacles to management. Now, the I've seen you won't even believe this, right? But well, you will because you'll have seen it yourself. I've seen organizations doing 30, 50 million pounds worth of revenue with 400, 500 people who don't even have a set of recognized KPIs. How can you run a business like that? How can you remove obstacles? We don't even know where we're going. The team doesn't know where we're going. None of the major management, the major leaders in the business can give a coherent answer to the question, what do we do? This is why transformation is needed. This is why we started right at the top. We've got 250 people. Instead of cutting 15% of them, so we can go to the shareholders and say we've saved some money. Let's invest in 15% of them to go and do things that nobody else is doing. Right? The economy is rife with these stories. Google used to have. Do they call it FedEx days? Do you remember that? That's a bit of an old-fashioned thing where they'd have to go away for a day, a month, I think, and deliver something. It didn't matter what it was. They just had to deliver something. And things like Google Calendar were born out of this. And, tools where people just went away and they were just creative. It just blows my mind. The more you try to control it, it's perverse, isn't it? It's like Zen. The more you try to control your organization, the more obstacles you put in the way. And you know, if you're not buying this, right? If you don't have an environment, if you're listening to this now and you're thinking about the people in your team thinking they'd never be able to do it, then you're the problem. There are no bad teams, only bad leaders. There are
Yes.
no bad teams, right? You put them in there. You've got to enable them. You've got to empower them. You've got to train them. You've got to create the environment. You've got to remove these obstacles in order for them to do the things that we're talking about. And it's going to be uncomfortable, and you need to be brave. And you might even lose a bit of money initially, but imagine where you're going to go. But a lot of it, this is the short-termism thing again, Chris. This is what it absolutely boils down to. We'll do that when we got a little bit more time. We'll do it when we're out of the woods. We'll do it once we've achieved break even. We'll do it as soon as. We'll do it when. We'll do it. You're never going to get there because the next short-term thing is going to come up. And this is why value first is so important. Because if it's value first, then it changes the rules of the organization. If it's profit first, that's a different set of rules, right? If it's people first, that's a different set of rules. If it's customers first, it's a different set of rules. If it's value first, how do we achieve that? It's
Getting
like,
out of the way.
yeah, absolutely. You've got all these people waiting for you, right? Nobody comes to work to fail. Nobody comes into work to do rubbish work. Nobody comes into work to get picked on or performance managed or sacked even, or to not hit a target or not get commission. Everybody comes into work on a fundamental level to win with you. If they're working for your organization, they believe in you in some shape or form, right? While they still do, before you drum that out of them.
Yeah. Well, they're trying to be successful.
Of course.
And they will be successful within the constraints that they are given. And this is where it's like value first is all about helping organizations transform because AI is here and you got to find a way. AI is the same. Are you creating the environment for it to be successful? And now, the humans plus AI, that's some magic moments are happening. And that's how these organizations that are 2, 3, 4, 5 people, they don't have all of this overhead to unravel and change manage. They don't have barriers to remove, right? So they just get to go. They just get to use all this stuff. And this is, man, I learned all this the hard way, right? This thing this team is going through, and we've talked about management systems and you do want to document what success looks like for the business up and down, KPIs and how you get there. And there's a way to do that, especially when regulation or industry standards are involved, and there's auditors and accreditations and all this stuff, and you can build those systems very specifically to enable accreditation or enable passing the audit.
Yep.
Right, which is very different from doing it because you want to be good at business, because you want your people doing great things, because you want to continuously improve. And as you start to break it down, and this is why we're here, this is not an easy task. It should be an easy mindset to get into and an easy understanding to make that you have to go down this path. It is not an easy path because you have to break down this thing that has existed for a long time. But if you can make that decision, the reason you've been saying no to it is because this is just giant mountain, right? That will take at least a year. If you could just take a break from your business, it would take a year still to rebuild and rethink this whole organizational structure. But now you have AI that can help you, right? And the difference between a quality management system that was built to pass audits and one that is built to continuously improve at the pace that we're going, it's night and day. The DNA is different. So if you're going to go this route of continuous improvement, you have to rethink the entire
mm,
system,
mm.
right? To the
It's,
point where when I was in this system,
mm,
because I didn't have any experience, what did I do as a manager? I put checklists everywhere I could because I could go in and make sure things were done right. And as we're talking through this, not only does it put a bunch of pressure on me as the manager to always be available to do that checklist at the right time so the customer gets the thing, it's also puts pressure on the person that's right before the checklist.
mm,
It's inevitably this adversarial relationship where it's like, oh, it's either I got to do my job so well to pass this 20-point inspection, or I know that this is coming, so I don't really like it's fine. There's a
mm,
checklist there, right? Like, so that was where I started. And I get to tell people, it's like, hey, like, it's clear that the problems that it was implemented to solve are still here, like 10 years later.
mm,
So what better example of maybe we should do something differently?
mm, mm.
Like, do we need,
But
right?
this whole thing is fascinating, and we see it every day. We see it in HubSpot pipelines as much as anything else, right? I'd like to sum up or put this back to you. The way I like to think about this is, if you're doing it right, then you take your accreditation or your certification or whatever it is, and you look at it, you reflect on it, and you go, "Tick, yeah, we do that, 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 we do that." If you're doing it wrong, you take it to the team and you say, right, guys, this is what we've got to do in order to get the next tick. Right. So
Yeah.
what you end up doing is work into the process. It's a bit like the difference between a target and a ceiling. You know, the way most businesses approach revenue targets, but probably all targets in fairness, but whether they're activity or people related or whatever, but revenue targets certainly is. If we could just get them to that level, we'll be okay. And in fact, and I've known financial directors who do this, in fact, we'd be a little bit better off if we only got to 90% of that level, because then we wouldn't have to pay so much commission, right? That's a ceiling. Whereas most of the salespeople I know feel their best, they're most effective, they're most efficient, they're most aggressive, they're happiest, whatever you want to call it, once they've hit target. And the easiest way to sell is when you don't need to sell. The easiest deals that you'll do are the ones that when you've already done target. So why not make target lower and become the floor instead of the ceiling? Well, this is a different mindset. This is one that takes a lot of bravery. And what's wrong with paying bigger commissions if it's leading to bigger revenue? I used to have this conversation with this one sales finance director all the time. I'm not generating an extra 100 grand just so I can pay out 30 of it in commissions. Why ever not? It's absolutely mad. Well, for me, it was absolutely mad. So this whole thing, the way that we've always done it, and it's really curious because they usually put in place for the best reasons, but for some reason, there's something in us as managers or as people, as human beings, where we work to the process. We do enough, don't we? We don't want to stick our neck out. We don't want to look silly. We certainly don't want to fail. So we suddenly work, and before you know it, the process is the process in its own right. It's not now how, if you can't get to your target, what you do. It's not your guardrail or your safety net. If you're out there trying to have conversations to people and you don't really know where to start, it's the thing you have to do. It's
Yeah.
the question you have to ask, and you become a robot. You're just somebody who sticks, and if the process goes wrong, you fail. It happens to us over and over again. I'm only thinking of it because you're talking about it now, but this is a fascinating idea where as soon as you sort of capture it, as soon as you lay it down, people start to work to it. It's almost counterproductive in a way. In a way.
Yeah. That's I've been man, there's this balance between formal and informal
Mm,
that if you can hit it, It's definitely the magic spot. And this is where I think only with AI can you hit it consistently, because you need to measure unmeasurable things to understand. And I say unmeasurable in that AI can do some of that because it is behavioral analysis at scale, like understanding indirect body language and words used in certain contexts. And like some of that scoring is getting really, really good in HubSpot, by the way. If you give it the guardrails to say, like, these are the words that matter to my business, these are the things to watch out for. And um, yeah, it's a tough place to be, but I think like that's where it comes to mindset, right? If it's not about control and it's about enablement,
Yeah.
that changes the way that you document, the process,
Yeah. Or police
because
the
people
process.
will, right?
Yeah.
People will work to it
Yeah.
until they can't do their job by following it, and then there is no process.
Yeah.
Like they can't, because they will naturally like move the needle in other ways and say like, oh, well, if I do this way, and now everything gets better. So I guess this documented process is over here, but there's no way I'm held accountable to it because I'm doing a lot of sales,
Yeah.
right? I'm doing my actual KPI, which is my compensation and, my numbers, right? Versus the process that's like, you know, and I think finding that, something that's come up is I don't think we get there usually because there's so much iteration required to understand all the different scenarios that anybody in a business, in most businesses now, like customers are coming from every angle, every channel. Like when it was just call or email and that's it, it's
Mm,
very easy to be like, all right, this is your call playbook, this is your email playbook.
mm,
Like get really good at that. And you could get really good. But then as soon as social shows up or chat bots or anything like that, like, oh, I don't know how we deal with that. Right. And like now that to build that flexibility in, again, back to AI, it could do this for you. You just have to ask it to,
mm,
right? You can layer on the processes on the different iteration, and you can understand this is where we need to flex, this is where we need to standardize,
mm,
right? That's available to you now. And another great example that, and the reason I love the nuance here is it's so easy, especially with AI, but it wasn't. Imagine your best or worst, worst person on the team where we can just say the right 5 words to just tank the meeting, like to just send it in the wrong direction, right? And I was there on Friday and trying to find the balance between human-led process documentation and AI, like supported um, process documentation to speed things up, right? Because most of the time we don't do process documentations because we don't feel like we have the time, or we just don't want to because it takes a long time and it's hard, right? Now you can record meetings and just throw it into AI
yep.
and say, AI, build a process map. So we do that. And like most things, I wanted to check it out before we got to the meeting, but we didn't. I couldn't find the time,
Mm,
so we're just gonna go with it,
mm,
right? And it becomes very clear that AI didn't pick up some things
mm,
like from the microphone that was catching all the audio, and some names weren't right, and some process steps were a little out of whack, right? So then we switched to the other diagram that is supposedly better. It is better, and I get to the moment where I get to highlight for everybody. Okay, this one took 5 hours of human attention. This AI one took 15 minutes. Both of them are somewhere between 0 and
mm,
100% accurate, right? Neither is because that's where we put 5 hours in, and then you put it in front of 20 people, they will find something wrong.
Yep.
Right? So neither is 100%, neither is 0%. We have to work to find the balance
Mm,
of not spending 5 hours, but also documenting things
mm,
well.
mm.
Right?
And I think it's an insight here. I learned this a long time ago as a sales manager. And I think a lot of sales teams are limited because they don't have this realization. And I'm thinking it again, as you're talking, I'm thinking about this thing, right? You, as a leader, you have to learn how to teach somebody to do the thing that you want them to do with their way, not your way. And I think this is where AI can really set you free, because it can empower that individual. They actually don't need your instruction as to the way that you used to do that thing, which is what most management boils down to. Wow, when I was a rep, this is what I would do. Now you have to do these same steps, these same process, and it may just not work for that person at all. So they have to find their own way of cracking that same. And your job is to get them to find that way, not to find your way. It's really hard, right? As a manager, to look at somebody failing and to not tell them this is how I did it, because it's absolute human nature. And for me, lock yourself in a room. Well, look, we talked about referral marketing earlier. Imagine we're a small business. We're an agency, and most of the business that comes our way is referrals. And I've just spent probably about 2 years doing my best, having fallen squarely into the trap of lead gen, trying to build up a lead engine, a content engine, whatever you want to call it, right? And I can't. It's just too hard. I can't do it consistently enough. I can't do it with enough value. Can't reach enough people. And I'm not, I'm not saying that there hasn't been positive things along the way, because they have. But I don't have a reliable lead flow based on those things that I did. Where's my business coming from? It's coming from my contacts, my connections, the people that I've known, the people I've done great work with. So all the while I've been ignoring that, I've been kind of like, pissing into the wind, if I can say that, and on national TV, national LinkedIn TV. Imagine I'd taken that 2 years of effort and sweat and tears and creativity, problem solving, and applied it to empowering my referral network,
Mm-hmm.
co-creating with young Chris, for instance. Is there a more powerful thing to do than to co-create with other people within your? So why don't we do more of that? I know there are people who have come to me following this video series. I know how much value you and Profoundly and Value First and HubSpot have had from this video series. Shouldn't we be putting our time into creating value, not pissing people off?
I
it's
mean,
it's it's fascinating. It's absolutely fascinating.
it's wild how people say they want to keep it simple. Like this is, I like value creation for me is the original first principle.
Mm,
Like if you're not doing that, what are you doing? Right? Like, and the common retort to the lead gen like conversation, especially with referrals. Like, by the way, referrals was first. Like that was the first form of pipeline generation.
yeah, of course it was. Of course it
And
was.
it's the only one that has stayed like anyways, like they talk about scale and volume, but then they turn around and show you metrics like 1,000 leads get you 100 calls, get you 10. Like, and now we're inevitably at a place like it always. I just gotta laugh to myself in HubSpot. Like, granted, they've gotten good at positioning this as a good thing because it is, and it's like, yeah, but the traffic that does get to your site now, it's good traffic. Like, no shit. Like, because we're not just spraying and praying, because we need 1,000 leads.
Mm,
The people that are naturally getting to our website, and like as a related like
mm,
analogous experience, after COVID hit, right? Like, I mean, while we were still in it, honestly, like
Mm,
some trade shows were spinning back up, right? And attendance was lower, but the quality of people that were coming to the table was like 100%. Like everybody that came and talked to you was qualified to talk. Like, and of course, because students weren't showing up, people that were just kicking tires weren't showing
yeah,
up, people that
yeah,
didn't have a reason to go for their business were not going. And now we're seeing that at scale because they don't have to, like, they don't have to expose themselves to lead like generation tactics,
mm,
right? You just got AI, right? And guess what? AI knows that referrals are the highest performing referrals and word of mouth.
mm.
It's not rocket science. Like thank you, SaaS, for completely distracting us as a B2B. Like, oh, it's maddening, man. It should be so simple. It should be
Well,
so simple.
but it's so easily done. I spent years, decades as a salesperson creating and nurturing networks. You know, whether I was selling advertising or then managing people who were selling advertising and then other B2B services and so on. And we everybody says it. People buy from people. No, I don't actually 100% agree with that. Let's move on from that. But they'll certainly, you know, if you sent somebody to me, the likelihood of that deal closing is way, way higher than if somebody downloaded some random document. And nobody's doing it anyway. We were doing it because it was novel and exciting and people wanted to learn. Now there's just a torrent of shit. The enshittification of the internet, as people have described it, you know. So I'm protecting myself from this stuff, whereas before maybe I'd read and analyze it. So my task is to go to AI or to go to my most trusted friend or to go to somebody who I know knows something and ask them for the shortcut. Who's the best person you know for this? I did it. I did it earlier. I did it earlier on Claude. What's the best email verification tool for HubSpot? You know, I didn't go around all of the different sites. I didn't Google it. I didn't this. I didn't that. Just a daily search that completely changed. You know,
Yeah.
and I'm in tech. You'd think I'd have. So say it's very much is like empowering us to go back in many ways. But these principles, we still even that is about removing the obstacles. What
Yeah.
obstacles do you get when you search? You know, when you get a big list of things, you don't get the answer. You get to research the answer, which was amazing when we didn't have any other option. And then you
Yep.
get these ones at the top that are sponsored. So we know they're not necessarily the best in any shape or form. And in fact, neither are the others. They're just the ones who are the best at getting themselves found when it comes to the search. And that's why, you know, review sites still do as well as they do. Peer review is still so important. Sites like Reddit and you know even 4chan, the deeper you go away from the mainstream, the more value there is in them for
Yep.
exactly this reason, because they're not commercialized and they're not corrupted and they're not being like co-opted by big search or by big tech or whatever. It's always been value first and it will always be value first. We do just need to find our way back to it.
Yes. And that's where I think AI is going to force it because it cannot operate any other way. Like
No.
it just leads to unnecessary complexity. And yeah, we're gonna keep going next week with principle number 6. Okay, so we've removed the barriers. Let's say uh, we have to enable learning now because we don't have these barriers. It's a different environment. We talk about like not taking for granted that okay, we're psychologically safe now. So let's just, share which like we have to learn and on so many different levels. So enabling learning over controlling execution. I just gotta share this line because this like think about it all week. We believe adaptation requires freedom to experiment and learn. Wow. And the thing is with this and with the barriers, like Tony's talking about, like Reddit and these other spots we can see on LinkedIn, the barriers for the buyer like are gone.
Mhm.
Like they just do what they're going to do. The barriers for us as individuals inside of an org, GPT worked great for us at home.
Mhm.
Why isn't it working? Why isn't AI working for us in the business? Like barriers are being removed for us everywhere else and somehow not happening in the business. So we'll be back next week to touch on that principle number 6. This has been fun as always, Tony.
Fantastic. Always a pleasure.
Have a great week, everybody. See you next time.